Let's do something fun. Come on.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's not rocket surgery. It's science.
I don't want to get too sciencey.
No, get sciencey. That's my jam.
Whoa. Yeah. Woo! I'm Bill Nye, and I'm here to, dare I say it, save the world.
I don't know if he's here to save the world right now. He might have already done it. He's just here for a conversation.
Oh, yeah, it's in the can. 6.5 hours. I think that's enough. I think the world is secure now.
Bill, it's a pleasure to have you here. And
So good to be had.
It's so exciting to be able to talk about this, to be able to talk about Bill Nye Saves the World, where you talk about the most pressing issues that are happening right now in the science world.
It is interesting to note, interesting to me, that is, that we recorded these shows in October before the most recent election.
When all of us thought that election was going to go a different way.
Yeah, yes. Not all of us, but I guess a lot of people. Certainly 3 million more than...
The majority of us, could I say?
Yeah, it's an old problem. No, it is. It's an old... The Electoral College is an old issue.
Maybe you can tackle that in your next season, even though it's not necessarily scientific, but you could.
Well, actually, we have discussed a show about politics, and here's why I mention it. I claim, I'm from the U.S. I grew up here. I don't know any better. Anybody not from the U.S.? Any Canadians? Anybody? I think that the Founding Fathers, people who wrote the Constitution, were nerds. And they were trying to build or establish a system of government based really on scientific principles of building in change, building in a process where one side keeps the other side from running amok. And the system is really cool, that it has this change built in. And along with that is the Electoral College, which is a bunch of compromises, and here we are.
Well, if you read their text, the Founding Fathers' text, there's no way they weren't nerds.
That's what I mean, yeah. Okay. No, so, to do a show about it would be cool.
Yeah,
Not about the Electoral College, about the nerdy nature of government building.
I would absolutely love that show. Let's talk about Saves the World.
Yes.
Let's talk about the issues.
It's a little troubling sitting next to me.
The episodes that I watched last night were about global warming, and they were about artificial intelligence, and they were about vaccinations. And I loved that the first episode that I watched was about vaccinations because the anti-vax movement has seemingly spread and gained some notoriety. Our current president at one time gave some
he says
legitimacy.
A lot of things.
He says whatever he can to whatever audience he thinks will respond positively to it, you know?
I guess, yeah.
But was that sort of your initial idea? Was like, let's go after the things that are misunderstood, that people are moving in the wrong direction?
We want to have a scientific perspective from issues facing society. People who don't get vaccinated are potential trouble. The reason you get vaccinated is to protect me from you. It is not about you. It's about me. Or if you're me, then you, me. And so... the thing is, if you don't get vaccinated, a germ can get in you and incubate and mutate. And then you produce, right? Then you produce a new strain that everybody else's immune system has to deal with. So you could make a very strong argument that you're required to get vaccinated. That's like a law, a rule, a you could make that argument. Ooh, whoa, whoa. And then you can't join the military without getting vaccinated.
Is that true right now?
Yeah. No, they can't. Military cannot have people barfing and throwing incompetent in the battlefield. Incapacitated, I mean incapacitated.
And you have this panel conversation with, and one of the women that are on your panel is a woman who didn't vaccinate her children.
Yeah, it's a cool story. To me,
it's a cool story. I thought it was a great story, and rarely do you get the personal side of this.
I interrupted
debate.
you. Finish the story.
Oh, that was it. He had a woman on. She didn't vaccinate her kids. They got sick. She vaccinated them.
Yeah, that's it. It's 3 parts. 3 parts to the story. But she was not a believer. Now she's a believer based on their family got sick on rotavirus, which is a miserable thing, I guess. It went on for days. So she was an interesting example. And then we have people from the Centers for Disease Control. It's the people that work on this problem full time. But about that one show, we went into it with a real scientific point of view. And what you started talking about was there's a trend right now for people to believe that they can believe something hard enough and it's every bit as valid as scientific evidence. And that is, we claim is not true. By we, I mean people who are scientifically literate claim that's not true. So if you just believe that climate change isn't happening, then it won't be happening. It turns out not to be good.
Does that feel like a rising trend to you in this country in the last 20 years? I mean, people talk about Ronald Reagan, who was a Republican. I know that science is not partisan, as you said backstage, but Ronald Reagan in the 80s heard that we were hurting the ozone layer, and NASA told him, right, that we were hurting the ozone layer, and he actually made strides to change that.
The Environmental Protection Agency was created by Richard Nixon, who's a very conservative guy. I mean, whatever else he had going on. He was a very politically very conservative guy, and he was faced with the problem. You know, we're having these marches every week now about something or other in Washington, D.C., and I'm old enough to remember the Vietnam War, and the marches of the Vietnam War caused a change in policy, and the first Earth Day was in 1970. I was there. I grew up in the city limits of Washington, D.C. I rode my bicycle to the Washington Monument and locked my bike to a flagpole. No, it used to be a small town. If you did that now, I presume the bike would be X-rayed and destroyed, and I would disappear. I would have never been seen again if you tried that now. But because of the pressure of Earth Day, Richard Nixon went on to create the Environmental Protection Agency. And I wonder now about the Environmental Protection Agency. This is a bureaucracy that's been around for 30 years. I don't think you can just dismantle it one afternoon. I think the inertia will be 40 years. The inertia will, the bureaucracy will just look at, oh yeah, okay, Mr. Pruitt, yeah, have a nice day. We'll be here after you're gone kind of thing. And this idea that government is inherently bad and you want to dismantle it, I'm not on board with that.
But what about the surge in the with the exception of just our government, the surge in the last few years of maybe 10 years or so of people sort of just believing what they want to believe?
That's what I say, that your belief is somehow every bit as valid as evidence. No, it's not. So we're doing a whole show, people, to save the world. It starts Friday morning. So it's going to be midnight Pacific time, 0300 here Eastern time. Watch all 13. Turn it up loud. Binge it, baby.
It is extremely bingeable. The shows are, outside of being informative, they're incredibly entertaining and fun to watch.
I love you, man. Right on.
And
yes.
Surprising, Carly Kloss is one of your correspondents.
Yes.
How in the hell did that happen? Who knew?
Carly Kloss, for those of you who don't know, is a mega model, supermodel. She in English units, she's 6'2" anyway. Maybe she's more than that. And then she puts on these crazy heels, and anyway, I think she's spent a little time with her. She's a very smart woman. I think she wants to do something besides holding still, wearing jewelry. And so we had her be a correspondent. She's very good. She interacts with people. She's great. She's a natch.
When it comes to the field pieces that you guys are coming up with, are those presented to you by the correspondents, or is that like your team comes
we argue
together?
about it. No. It's a writer's meeting. It's a writer's table, pounding and yelling and all that stuff. And and then the budget's a big thing. I mean, we sent Carly, first we sent her to Madison Square Park. Oh my God, that was very expensive. But we also sent, and Italy. We sent Derek Mower to Holland and South Korea. We sent Emily Calandrelli to India. Emily Calandrelli is Space Gal, for those of you unfamiliar with her presence, and she's on Fox Kids. But she met the guy who's generally believed to be the last person to get polio in India. He's in his mid-20s. He's a software engineer. He lives in a wheelchair. And he pointed out that it wouldn't occur to anybody in India to be anti-vax. There would be no such thing, because there's people with polio all around on the streets everywhere in India. It's in the tropics, and India is the second most populous nation on earth, and the people are really close together, and so this disease was transmitted really quickly 4 or 5 decades ago. So I went to elementary school with a guy who had polio, man. You do not want polio, people. No.
And that's one of the things that's said in the interview with the correspondent who went there. She says, in India, in India, they remember when they had these diseases. In the United States, we have this situation potentially where we don't remember the horrors that these diseases sort of havoc. Do you think it might be the same way when it comes to modern science and modern medicine, that people just don't remember what it was like before we had these things?
That's definitely part of it. Now, I'm of a certain age where I grew up with the Apollo program and moon landings, and people had tremendous trust in science. Maybe you could argue too much trust, and that's what led to, oh yeah, we're just going to build nuclear power plants, it's going to be great. But it turned out the real drawback of nuclear energy is nobody wants it, and it's quite expensive. But the idea seemed cool. That I'm changing the subject. But people really believed in science. It was crazy optimism in the 1960s. But then people kind of let it go. I think the expression would be took it for granted. And so we're trying to turn the tide, people.
Trying to save the world.
Save the world. And so, by the way, the song was done by Tyler, the Creator, for you rap buffs, and he's a charming guy. I spent the day with him. He's a cool guy.
Tyler, the Creator, charming guy is the first time I've ever... I mean, he's wonderful. I've interviewed him before, but I've never heard anyone say, he's very charming.
Well, when we were hanging out, he was into science. He was into planetary science and space exploration, and the song has a tip of the hat, or the tip of the beat, a tip of the rhythm to the old Science Guy song, and it's cool.
What do you think is the most pressing issue of all of the episodes? What do you think is the one issue that is the most pressing right now?
Climate change. I mean, if you like to worry about things, you are living at a fantastic time. So I was in Greenland this summer, and one of the mysteries, so we are doing, it's University of Colorado a little bit, but mostly University of Copenhagen from Denmark. These guys and gals are drilling into the ice in the middle of the ice sheet, where they believe the ice sheet is the thickest, 400 kilometers, 250 miles from the coast, middle of nowhere. You guys, if you find yourself there, be sure the Air Force plane is still around, because there's no way to get out. It's not like, well, I'll take my rifle, live off the land. Nope, there's nothing to freaking eat anywhere. It's just ice. 200 miles in maybe more than that, in every direction. And so they drill into the ice, and they find bubbles of the ancient atmosphere trapped between ancient snowflakes. They count neutrons in the oxygen atoms, which is very closely related to the sea surface temperature, where the water evaporated to make the cloud, to make the snowflake, to become the ice. And there is a phenomenon that they've observed in various places around the world in the ice, which they're calling abrupt climate change. So the Earth's climate changes dramatically in just 20 years. So the way it was described to me, and do you know why?
Why?
Nobody knows why. And they've tried to write computer models.
Question, Bill.
They've tried to write computer models to replicate this phenomenon, and they haven't been able, it has not been able to do it. So the way it's described, imagine being born, and you get your breakfast cereal from the Midwest, from Kansas, Nebraska, Illinois. It's a great breakfast cereal, but by the time you get out of high school, the wheat won't grow there. It's too hot, the rain patterns have changed, you gotta get your wheat from what is now Canada. We are not set up for that. If that were to happen again, we don't have the highways, the railroads, the means of distributing wheat. We don't have the means to till soils in regions that are inaccessible right now by conventional transportation. So that's one example of the kind of thing, damn.
So wait, this rapid climate change that takes place over the course of 20 years, that is a phenomenon, it's not in any way attributed to CO2 emissions?
Oh, no.
Like
so that's where they're trying to make a computer model to work backwards, to reproduce it. And there's some speculation based on science that we've overwhelmed that effect. That effect may never happen again because we're heating the world so fast. So yeah, it's interesting. Can we say interesting? But the trouble, everybody, is that the world's getting warm fast. It's not that the world didn't used to have more carbon dioxide in ancient dinosaur days. There used to be an inland sea running up into what is now Montana, over Wyoming and stuff. But they probably didn't call it Wyoming back then. And that's not the point. The point is that it's fast. It's happening fast. So people who live in Galveston, Texas, Norfolk, Virginia, let alone Manhattan, are going to have the ocean, and Miami Beach in Miami, they're going to have the ocean coming into their front yard and their basement or their first floor, and they're going to leave. And when I say ocean, I'm talking about this much water. But when that much water's on the floor, you can't be there. I mean, it's just, well, just put it on stilts. Okay. You can't put you can't put everything on stilts. However, there will be so-called mitigation or things that we'll do in the medium term, build dikes and weirs and things. But we got to get this done, you know.
When it comes to the artificial intelligence episode,
which was super fun, huge fun.
It's so much fun. You guys approach it from the perspective of like what happens when AI develops consciousness. How does it interact?
How do we know?
How would we know? How much should we fear it? And
that's what everybody goes to. It's gonna kill us all. Artificial intelligence will kill us all.
What if it saves us?
I was going to say, I like that my thermostat remembers that it's the weekend or whether or not I have one of those thermostats. They're not extraordinary. You can go to, not to get a credit, but you can go to Home Depot and get one. And, you know, you get on a train at the airport that takes you from Terminal A to Terminal C, and you trust it. You know, some days there'll be a lot of people with a lot of luggage. So it's heavier, it takes more electricity to get it going, and it takes more to slow it down. And the same way when it's lighter, you're not afraid of it going too fast and not be able to, you're not worried about that. In other words, we have that worked out. So why not work out the next 36 problems, including self-driving cars? Imagine Manhattan where we have taxi pods that are half as wide as a taxi cab, and then you just get in and the taxi pods all interact in happy potty fashion. And then it's actually more efficient. We look back on the days, blah, ha, ha, I learned to drive. It was horrible. And everybody will tell the hilarious jokes of when they scraped the fender. That was back when humans had to use their brains to operate cars. And don't tell me it couldn't happen. My grandfather rode a horse into battle in World War I. And he lived through it, which was part of how I got here. And I think there were some other interactions. But nobody drove into battle, nobody rode a horse, rather, into battle 20 years later, and nobody would even think of that. Everything changed.
It absolutely can happen. It seems like it's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Do you worry about...
I worry about everything, man.
But the non-science side of AI right now is economic displacement and figuring that out. Do you think we're willing to figure that out or can figure that out?
There was a problem in New York City, where we are, of horse manure. Have you seen these pictures? The streets were shin deep in horse processed food. And so everybody was concerned that you couldn't shovel it fast enough. And there used to be a tradition, I've heard Vin Scully talk about, he's a radio announcer, he's in his 70s, where horses were such a part of everyday life as a motive force, as a source of mechanical motion, that they would just die, and you'd leave the horse on the street, and there was a service that came by and scooped up dead horses. Those were the days.
This is something that you never, this is totally tangential, but this is something you never see in period films. Just the absolute disgusting waste that people lived in day to day.
Yeah, well, I guess. So anyway, people didn't like that. I know it sounds cool and old-fashioned, but when the horseless carriage was invented, everything was revolutionized in barely 10 years. So we can do this, everybody. Let's be optimistic. Let's go. So you don't, bear in mind that artificial intelligence machines are built by people. So we can make choices. We don't have to have them killer robots. We can make them happy robots.
I think
do happy things.
I think it's amazing that you say, that you bring about this optimism and you say, let's do this. Do you think that's something that we're missing right now is a fair amount of optimism and hope in science and sort of our ability to innovate?
Well, so this is, the trouble with another problem that's just fundamental about denying science or pretending that your beliefs are as important as science or as significant as science, is it affects our economy. If what the United States, or any country, what keeps any country in the economic game is innovation. If you stop innovating, you will fall behind. Is there anybody here who doesn't have a smartphone? Anybody? No. And that's a result of the discovery of transistors or the invention of transistors, then transistor logic, and then lithography to make them crazy tiny, and then a battery that could power them and carry around in your hand, and then all the infrastructures, blah, 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 blah. None of that stuff would be here without innovation. The same is true in maybe a more significant thing. When I came to the World's Fair here in 1965, there were 3 billion people in the world. The United Nations had a display. Now there's 7.3, almost 7.4 billion people. By the time many of the audience members are my age, there'll be 9 and maybe 10 billion people, and we're going to raise food for them on less land. 2%, at least 2% less land because of the encroachment of the ocean and urban sprawl. So what are we going to do? We're going to innovate. We're going to have agricultural practices that enable everybody to get some to eat. And that's science. So it's in the U.S. Constitution, peoples, in Article 1, Section 8, progress of science and the useful arts. It's in the Constitution. It's about parts about copyright and patents, but that they mentioned it. Well, no, but they understand the importance of protecting innovation. I mean, inventors would not be motivated if everybody's going to steal their designs. We're not talking about open source software. We're talking about people who innovate. How about Tyler, the creator? He has copyright protection. He drove up in an amazing car, a McLaren, just with the wing doors. It was impressive, people, impressive. It was.
Let's get some questions from
oh, good, here we go.
Right here.
Hi, Bill, how are you?
Fabulous.
Great. So as a millennial, I would consider you the spokesperson of scientific issues to the younger generation. Does the responsibility of that ever overwhelm you?
No, it doesn't overwhelm me. It propels me, man. Thank you all. But I will say, I guess I will say, I don't get it. Like, you guys come up to me and say, I really loved your show in science class when the VCR was rolled in. It was the greatest day of my life. And I love you for it, but the extent of it is amazing. I mean, like, really? I was in London. I was.
Now with Tyler, the creator, in his car.
Well, not in London. That was in Pasadena, California, which is a little more tame. But no, it's not. It's fine. Sorry. But people in Britain are watching the old show. Guy's 13, nephew, friend of mine. And he watches the show in Britain with my American accent, and he was able to understand it. And he loved it, and he's got a bunch of his friends love it. I'm like, wow, really? That's like millions of people. That's like a thing. That's a big deal. So I try to get it, and I can articulate it, but thank you. Not sure I do. Thank you all.
Next question, right here, or right there.
Yeah, right here. Hi, Brett. Nice to meet you. Been a big fan for a long time.
First-time caller. No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah,
Go ahead.
No, exactly.
Go ahead. Thank
yeah,
you.
so we were kind of like talking about it before, but in this current climate, in the conversation around climate change, it's definitely easy to get super discouraged and trying to think of like, okay, well, if the conversation seems to be going a different way, it can definitely
It's
be
frustrating.
Right,
So-
it's frustrating. So what can people do?
March
Like,
for
what are your
Science on
advice?
Saturday, Earth Day. I was in Washington for the first Earth Day March for Science. There'll be one in New York. They have over 500 now, what they call sister marches around the world. I call them. Well, they're organizers. And so I'll be there, and what we want to do is remind our lawmakers that science is political. If you get in the U.S. Constitution, come on, that's politics, okay? But it's not partisan. Like you can't say, well, I have this conservative viewpoint, therefore I dismiss this. You can't say I have this liberal or progressive viewpoint, therefore I embrace this. It's got to be objective. That is our goal, to have a system that is self-correcting. I guarantee you will hear the chant. What do we want? Science. When do we want it? After peer review. Yeah, you will hear that. And that's hilarious, but that's the idea, is that it's neither progressive or conservative, it just is. So be optimistic, man, change the world. All right, cool, I think that's done. Yeah.
One more question right here.
Hey, Bill, it's great to finally see you in person and not in my 8th grade science class.
Yes, see, that's what I'm talking about. But that's very cool, that's lovely. Lead on.
All right, so speaking of saving the world, you are seen as a scientific superhero to many people, not just
I love you,
little
man. Look
ones.
at that. He's got a cape. Well, it's a lab coat.
Like
Yes.
the cape man. So anyway, I was wondering, I was first of all curious about where your love of science came from and where it started, etc. But I was also wondering, who were your scientific superheroes growing up or even now?
So what happened is, I tell this story often enough. I was watching bees, bumblebees, and I remember thinking, that is crazy. How do they do that? They go up and down, backwards. They're all girl bees, by the way. You never see a boy bee unless you get the glass-covered hive. And I lived in the city of Washington, and I delivered the Washington Post newspaper. I was a paper boy. This is back before they were paper people. It was just paper boy, and in Ripley's Believe It or Not on Sundays, they ran a version of the following story a few times. Bees, according to aerodynamic theory, are misfits and should be unable to fly. Okay, that's a bad theory. I mean, even I could tell that the bees are flying. That they got. And this was led to me questioning all sorts of things that grown-ups tell you. And I realized that questioning was the process of science. Then as far as heroes, for me, I had some fantastic teachers. I really did. I had Ms. McGonigal, Ms. Cochran. I had Mr. Lawrence was awesome. That's what the kids say, awesome. Then Mr. Cross, but Mr. Lang, my physics teacher. I took the physics AP exam when it was like this new thing, before it was like commonplace. And I just thought it was the most wonderful way to understand the world. And then when I went to college, I took one class from Carl Sagan. And he was really all that. Man, that guy could deliver these compelling lectures. Like if you've watched Cosmos or read any of his quotations, the guy was amazing. And so a couple years after that, he started the Planetary Society. I joined. We looked it up. I'm a charter member. And now I'm the CEO of the Planetary Society. I'm not really sure what happened. There was a board meeting. You guys all know Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? So he's on the board. When you're around Neil, I don't know if you guys know this, but he's quite the connoisseur of wine. He's quite the enologist. And something happened at that board meeting, and now I'm in charge. I'm not really sure how that went down. But we promote, so you guys, while we're concerned about climate change, while we're concerned about vaccines, while we're concerned, what else? Artificial intelligence, the human population expanding, we still, in my opinion, have to explore space. Because space brings out the best in us, and space is inspiring. And it's how we answer these deep questions about where we all came from. And is there somebody else out there in the cosmos? Beep, 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 beep. That's my alien translation. Sending us messages. It's an extraordinary thing that I hope, if you watched the Science Guy show in 8th grade, I hope you got a little jolt that we could maybe make a discovery in your lifetime that would change the course of history. It would be pretty good. If we went to Mars and found something alive, whoa, dude. Does it have DNA, or is it a whole nother thing? Or is there absolutely nothing alive there, and we are unique in an amazing way? Like, whoa, it's all huge. So
Isn't the probability of life existing on another planet just like, I mean, of course there is.
I mean, we have 200 billion stars, in our galaxy, and there's at least that many galaxies. So how could there not, I mean, real people, how could there not be life elsewhere? But the question is there life right here in our own happy little solar system, which is only, you know, whatever, 3 light hours or 6 light hours wide. So anyway, it's big is what I'm trying to say. So this I find this fascinating, just utterly fascinating. So you've got to expect there's life elsewhere. Wouldn't it be something to get in touch with it? Them, us. Whoa.
Absolutely. Bill, I got to let you go. I love having you here. Thanks for coming by.
It's late. Hey, thanks, you guys.
The show.
Read the show, watch my
on
book.
Netflix. Is it this weekend? Does it premiere this Friday?
It's, so back east, it's 3 a.m. Thursday night, Friday morning. If you're out west, it's midnight. So on the service. That's the term of art at Netflix. It's on the service.
Bill Nye Saves the World on Netflix this weekend. Bill Nye, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.